Hello, my name is Megan McKee, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of tell you more about proper table etiquette and table manners. How many of you know proper table etiquette and manners? Well, I didn't. Growing up, this wasn't something that I was taught or used in my family. The only etiquette I had ever heard of was don't put your elbows on the table. And I never understood it as a kid. It didn't make any sense to me. But now I know that it doesn't look great while you're eating with people. There's a lot more than you think to table etiquette, you know. Have you ever went somewhere fancy and you weren't really sure which utensil or plate was used, or why there were so many, or what to say, not to say, and what's okay? I know I definitely have, so knowing proper table manners can benefit not only you, but those around you. First thing I'm going to cover is what to use when you eat. And in most cases, regardless of where you are, they're always going to use the outside in method to tell you what utensil to use first. And when you first sit down, you're going to place the napkin on your lap, just resting it and then unfolding it. So you have your napkin, and as you sit down, seat, you rest it, and then you unfold it. It looks a lot more proper that way. One important thing to remember when you aren't using your utensils, place them on your plate. Another thing is once you have used your fork or spoon, it actually should not touch the table again, therefore it allows you to rest it on your plate. So, say I use my spoon. I used it, and once I'm done with it, I rest it on my plate. It's not supposed to touch the table again. You can rest it on the side as well. Placements and when you use your utensils are one of the most important things when it comes to proper table etiquette. It is important as it impresses most people. And what you do at the table is just as important as well. A second thing that I would like to touch on is table talking. When you find yourself having a conversation at the dinner table, it isn't as simple as one may seem when it comes to being proper. You would think, oh, just a normal conversation. It doesn't matter. But it does. Most of you know talking with food in your mouth is greatly frowned upon. And a lot of things to remember, most people don't like it. Talking with food in your mouth, not okay. Definitely not proper. Some things to remember including chewing completely before you speak, as it's frowned upon. Another crazy but very proper thing to think about is yawning. Yawning at the table is one other thing that you shouldn't do, if at all possible, of course. I mean, it's gonna happen regardless. But if you do find yourself yawning at the table, or sneezing or coughing, you should always use your napkin to cover your mouth or nose and leave the table to wipe mouth or nose. Another good rule of thumb is to never let your elbows touch the table. And I'm sure you've heard that a good amount of times while eating, but there's actually one exception to this rule. And what I mean by elbows to the table is sitting like this. When you eat, don't let them touch. The exception though, which is great, is once you're done eating and it's just a conversation, the meal's finished, you can actually put your elbows on the table and rest them there. You don't have to do that the entire time, just while you're eating and utensils are being used. Along with table talk, cell phones should always be turned off. In your purse, in your pocket, just make sure that they are turned off. You shouldn't be having your phone on or on the table or answering text messages, answering calls, none of that. It's not polite. And if absolutely needed in case of an emergency, excuse yourself politely and answer the call as fast as possible. A lot of things that we normalize today, not okay. They're totally looked past when you eat out, and many don't know that it actually is extremely improper to do these things. Body language tells a lot to do with table etiquette. Being as proper as one can during and after the meal is greatly valued. Not only the meal, but everything leading up to the meal is important and has to do with table etiquette as well. When you approach the table, when you get to the restaurants, that's even important. If you're the host of the event or the dinner, you should lead the group to the table if the person who is supposed to and is working doesn't. Another good thing to always remember: make a reservation ahead of time and double check your reservations. It's so important, especially if it's a well-known popular restaurant. And I know we've all been there. You just think, oh, it'll be fine. They're not busy during this time, and you get there and you end up having to wait 45 minutes plus for a table. Especially when it comes to business dinners or business lunches, that's extremely important. And when it comes to paying for the check, that can be tricky, of course, depending on the situation. And if there's no established host present at a business meal, usually the senior pays for the check. Now, that doesn't mean eldest pays for a check always, but that's just a good rule of thumb if you're ever in a business lunch. If your card gets declined, a good thing to remember is to ask the restaurant if they take a check, or you can run to the ATM really quick. Of course, if they decline, politely explain the situation to someone else eating the meal with you and ask to just repay them the next day. Table etiquette is important, especially in the world of business. And without knowing proper table etiquette, you may find yourself feeling out of place, and knowing this information can help you in the long run. And these are just a few things that I learned very quickly, and there's a lot of many other things to consider when it comes to table manners and how to use them. Hopefully now you can impress anyone in these situations as knowing the table etiquette that you've learned. Of course, always going outside in with a napkin, never chewing or talking or coughing, just these little things, because knowing these things can help